Welcome back to the Nurses Investing for Wealth mini-series podcast. We've been talking about toxic nursing cultures and why when you understand what's going on with your money, it's easier than you ever imagined to free yourself from burnout work environments. I've heard from a lot of nurses at various points along their journeys, but today I feel so lucky to have Shemeka, founder and CEO of NOSA Group, on the show. NOSA stands for Nurse-Owned Staffing Agency, if you haven't heard that term before. Now seems like a great time to have Shemeka on the show right after we talked about the research findings indicating that agency nurses are more satisfied with their work and feel less like they're trapped inside the toxic nursing death spiral. Shemeka joined me in my program looking for an evidence-based money strategy that was financial jargon free so she could confidently stretch her salary further. Her main goals were to prepare for early retirement, generational wealth, and life flexibility faster without taking unnecessary risks with her money that would delay her progress. Shemeka's story illustrates that nurses who do the work required inside of Ultimate Nurse Investing can successfully plug into a comprehensive money system and unlock money clarity, confidence, and early retirement without guesswork. If you'd like to watch this interview between Shemeka and me, just click the video link in the show notes and you'll be taken over to the Nurses Investing for Wealth YouTube channel. But if listening is your cup of tea, stay right here. Here we go. Welcome back to the Nurses Investing for Wealth podcast. I cannot wait to tell you today's success story. Today I'm interviewing my beautiful student, Shemeka, and I think a lot of people listening are going to see themselves in your story, Shemeka. A little intro is that Shemeka is a second degree ADN nurse, and I think that you were working in HR for about 10 years before you became a nurse. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes, I worked for 10 years for the federal government in the Washington, D.C. area before I transitioned into nursing school because I still had some school to take, and then off to finish my nursing degree.
And now you're a business owner too, successfully starting NOSA Group, which is responsible for NOSA Con. And I understand NOSA stands for Nurse Owned Staffing Agency, but NOSA Group has morphed into a lot more than that since you started it. So, would you mind telling us a little bit more?
Right. So a part of my nursing career journey was becoming a travel nurse. So I did traveling from about 2014 to about 2017. And in that journey, I met a fellow travel nurse as well. And of course, we connected. And one of the things I noticed, just being a person who worked in human resources, was just this agency concept throughout healthcare. And really started to think about the idea of, hey, is this something that nurses do? Do nurses own their own staffing business, or is it always held by other individuals or corporate entities? And one day I saw the bill rate of my particular agency for the job that I was working, and that really kind of opened the door or kicked the door down to the idea of like, what does the process look like to do it and be the person on the other side. So throughout the journey, we created the NOSA group, the Nurse Owned Staffing Agency, on Facebook, which is where we started, and connected, networked, and collaborated with other people who were either in that same space where they were running their own staffing businesses or thinking about it, or maybe had done home care but was interested in staffing. So that's where we spent the last 5 or 6 years, on Facebook. And of course, we're on other platforms as well, but kind of journaling that journey. And then in 2022, we all came together for the NOSACON conference, where we had over 100 nurse-owned staffing agency owners, and most of us are small, mid-sized owners, local, regional, to network, get some education about changes, because surely there's been a lot of changes in the industry.
So, I just did not know that there were 100 other nurses around the country doing this. This is so cool to hear.
It is, and we're kind of a unique community because if you don't know, you don't know. We're not funded in the way that some of the larger corporations are, so we don't run commercials and ads on Facebook and different platforms. But the nice thing about healthcare in general is that it's really a word of mouth type of industry. So a lot of times that's how we got a lot of our first clients and employees, and that's the way a lot of nurses do it as well.
I love it. I know this is a tangent and I'm not going to go down it that far, but I am curious about how much was the difference between your pay and the agency's bill rate?
So this was what was this, 2015? I want to say, maybe I was getting paid $30 and they were billing 56.
Okay, so like they're getting paid almost as much as you get paid to do the work.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
amazing.
And it's pretty common.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's and it's something that I think most nurses, healthcare professionals don't realize.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think we so often don't have access to the data, but
Mhm.
yeah, makes sense. So, continuing on, so I don't get down this rabbit hole too far because I could talk to you more about it, but as listeners can see that Shemeka is just another one of our nurse colleagues who's excelling at life and in her career, and it has been so good to have you inside of Ultimate Nurse Investing. Shamika, when you joined, I remember you mentioned that you had felt you were in the middle stage of your money journey. You had some money saved, some investments, 401ks, access to a pension and life insurance. And like many nurses who come to the program, you joined with a really strong foundation. So, thinking back to 6 months ago before you joined me inside Ultimate Nurse Investing, why was organizing your finances or making a change, making some kind of change important to you at that time? Or what was motivating you to take action then rather than just to keep going how you were?
I think one of the things that was probably motivating me the most was the fact that, of course, I was getting older and I wanted to really create the type of retirement that I wanted. I don't think whether it's a nurse or a business owner or both, which many of us can be at times, we give enough time and attention to, hey, what does retirement look like until you're actually already in it or it's around the corner. It was important for me to not only like save for retirement, which I think is highly encouraged, and I of course learned from working in human resources, but also plan like what that lifestyle would be like. When do you want to do it? How much money do you need to do it? Are you on track? To actually hit those numbers and really connecting with someone that understood the industry and how it can be high highs and low lows sometimes, on both ends, business owner, working nurse, or both, as well as give a little bit of insight and education on things that I just didn't know, the stock market and brokerage accounts and things like that. Even though I owned a business, I really didn't know a lot about. So connecting with you really helped unravel a lot of those questions and really give me just like a level of comfort in being able to do those things.
So, so you mentioned that you had this space and you were really dabbling in a lot of things, and you did have a strong knowledge too. What was the biggest struggle that you were hoping to resolve? Is it Yeah, tell me more about that.
I think the biggest struggle I wanted to is that I had a perception of what retirement would look like as far as, oh, I do this and this, and then I'd be able to retire or take out on a pension from my federal government job. Or I'd make $1 million in my business and that would be how I would retire. But in reality, there's so many more variables that go into play. And I really wanted to feel confident. So I wanted to feel confident that, hey, I'm giving Fidelity X number of dollars or Charles Schwab or whomever, that I understand what they're doing with the money so that one, I don't get into a bad situation. I mean, you talked a lot about it in the class about fees and things like that, stuff that I hadn't thought about, and then kind of get to that age where I'm ready to retire, and now my money doesn't look the way that I had anticipated it to be. So it really was about, yes, following the track of what I knew, but also feeling comfortable to reach out to Fidelity to be like, hey, I saw these fees. What is this about? Can we switch over to a more conservative type of fund? So it was really more education based for me.
Yeah, the confidence. That's the theme that I heard come through is that you were looking for confidence of being able to know that your money was being put to use in the right places.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's pretty typical that nurses come into the program after trying lots of different things to help them set their financial strategy, whether that's spending years trying to learn it on their own or learning it for free, reading books, or investing money into other programs. What about you? Had you already tried to do something before this program? And how did that go for you?
I definitely tried some things. I've definitely taken free courses in person. Recently, Fidelity rolled out some webinars, which have been really good. So I've attended all the lunchtime webinars and things of that nature. I think the one thing I did that helped me the most was reading one of the books. I can't remember the name of it, about planning for retirement, and it's kind of sectioned out from, hey, how much should you have, how much will you need to spend, how much will you need to save, how pensions work, different types of accounts. So that was kind of the biggest starting point for me, was the reading that book, Planning for Retirement. I think that's.
Mhm. Yeah. And so you had done that work before this program or during this program?
I did it before the program, but there were elements of the book that, even though it was written, I still wasn't clear about.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's pretty typical. That's exactly what I found as well when I basically created my own money system is that some of the stuff that I was reading about didn't exactly fit me or wasn't customizable to me or wasn't familiar with what it's like to be a nurse and what the unique needs of a nurse are when it comes to
Mm,
money.
yes.
So I know that it's scary working with someone on the internet that you've never met before. So I'd like to chat with you for a second about what objections may have been running through your mind before joining. And I remember when we chatted at the time when you were thinking about joining, and you mentioned the main reason that you hadn't joined sooner was because of time. And I immediately admired that about you because that signaled to me that you were coming into the program at a time that was right for you when you knew you were going to be able to put in the work, take the action, show up for coaching, ask for help, and completely implement the steps. And you've done all of that. And so
Mhm.
I'm really, really proud of you for doing that. But I'm wondering, is there anything else that you would have said or that would have been running through your mind that would have prevented you from joining up that maybe other people would relate to?
Hmm. That's a good question. I think, like I said, time was the issue. I was referred, like I connected with you through Veronica, but also I think what something that may hinder people is thinking that they won't get it. I think even for myself, and I jumped on the group calls or dropped a question in the chat to kind of say, hey, I did the video, I read, I'm still not, getting it. I think the fear of not still not making sense. And the nice thing is having a resource like yourself to kind of be like, okay, so I've done all those things. I'm still, can you walk me through it? Because we've of course done that. And then that way it'll stick more. So I think sometimes that's a barrier. But for me, time had always been a barrier, and making it a priority. So, as I mentioned to you earlier, I pick it as my Saturday morning activity. Saturday morning, it's me and Angel um, for at least an hour, sometimes two, depending on where it kind of takes me. Because it's important. It's no different than planning to go to the grocery store or get your car checked. It has an importance in my life, in my family's life, so it can't be something that kind of sits on the back burner any longer.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I loved that about you, about how you really calendared or scheduled out the time to put in. And I think that you're right that there is a fear because so many of us have one beliefs that we should naturally be good with money. Why I
Mm.
don't know, but that's just a natural belief that a lot of that just gets filtered down to us. It must be epigenetics or something. Um and the fear that, well, that's not working, so am I really going to get this? And then the fear of being inside of another program trying to learn another thing that you've already tried to learn and still not getting it. And I love that you mentioned that that still comes up. That is still a thing that comes up even when you're inside of the program. And but you also mentioned there's help. And that is exactly why I don't offer my program without my help. I could just throw out my course and say, Have at it, good luck." But that's why I don't do it, because I understand that there's help that's needed along the way. And so I'm really glad that you've been able to come inside of group coaching and ask those questions so that we can get you unstuck fast. I hope that that's how it's felt. Has it?
Yes, I think the monthly or bi-monthly coaching calls kind of helps me get there. So if I am in a place that I'm stuck, I may post a question, and then during the session, you'll kind of talk or go more in depth about it. So that way, if I'm there, I can follow up if I need to, or just watch it later and like okay, and then kind of follow those next steps. So the one-to-one element or the question element is really nice, as well as seeing where other people are in their process. I think many of us have similar journeys, especially being in healthcare. So, you know, feeling like, you're a part of a community where we're all kind of moving towards similar goals. And then also that, the success stories, people reaching their goals or figuring out. I think when I first started, someone was rolling over a couple of different retirement plans into one, which I think for a lot of us is a thing. So, okay, you figured it out. It wasn't as complicated as you wanted to be. And then it kind of helps you move towards where you ultimately want to be. So, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So, following on that, thinking back to you 6 months ago, you haven't yet joined, you haven't yet completed the work. What do you want to tell yourself, or what would you tell yourself 6 months ago?
I would probably tell myself, and I think you said this as well, be patient, be patient, be consistent. So, as much as you can show up to the session, show up, even if you don't have any questions. A lot of people's experiences are, is helpful information. And then also do the homework. As you do the homework, you become more comfortable, more questions come up. And then you feel a lot more confident as you reach like month two, three, four, as you're going through the different modules to kind of say, okay, so I've gotten a handle over this. I can step into this now, understand the difference between stocks and bonds, and I can understand, my score and, my numbers and where I want them to be and where to also make changes. Because that was also one of the bigger things that I wanted to do was I had my money in a bunch of different Fidelity stocks that weren't necessarily performing as well. So kind of understanding the breakout that I needed to have to get me where I wanted to be was important as well.
Yeah, and for you, you had a lot of unique situations as well with different types of accounts, I mean. And so we got to talk through some of that as well along the way. The employee stock purchase program, ESPP, we got to go into depth on 529s, which is an educational saving or type of educational savings plan, but then there's the actual educational savings account. But
Mhm.
yeah, we got to talk about a lot of really unique things. I'm really glad about that. Royalties, the other thing that came
Yes.
up. Yeah, also so
And that helped me from jumping in too much because sometimes you see something that you think is a good thing and you're jumping into the wrong thing. So,
yeah, exactly. And learning how to balance that with your risk, right? So I want to go back to what you said starting out, which is that seeing that it is a series of steps. And it's like we want to be at the end right away when we start. And but there's a series of steps to get there and the patience. So that's what you said, you to be patient and to take those steps because as you work through them, you start to unfold the why. You start to unfold the why to your money strategy and then you reach the end and it all makes sense. Is and I think that's what you're saying.
yes. Yeah. Yeah. I'm in a totally different space. Um, from I think I started in January, from January to now. I'm a totally different space. I feel like I have more control. I can ask and speak to you or speak to other, financial people from a different place because I have like clear goals in mind, and have them set, and you're just able to really move forward versus kind of moving in fear or moving in what other people might be doing.
And knowing how to hold others accountable and what to ask for.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's definitely a good one. I definitely boosted my confidence. No, because I think, and we've even had an experience here, I think the banking and the financial space can be intimidating to people at times. And I don't know, even though I think a lot of institutions, especially like your credit unions and stuff like that, do a pretty good job at it, don't kind of create as welcoming of an environment to it, where it's more personalized to your situation. So I think that in those types of settings, really knowing what you want, what you're looking for, you can ask the questions about the fees and how long can I take it out early, what happens, penalties, makes for a much enjoyable conversation than them kind of telling you, hey, this will be a good fit for you, and you kind of moving on something that may not work out.
That's right. Yeah. 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 Because people that work at banks are salespeople. And so they get paid commission based on, what accounts you open, what kinds of investments you buy, all of that. And so looking out for yourself, protecting yourself and being able to have those conversations is super important. What specific feature did you like most about the program or that you felt gave you clarity the most?
I would probably say the group sessions gave me clarity. I did also appreciate the self-paced element of the course, where you can kind of move from into different places, and the spreadsheets. Love the spreadsheets.
You
That's what
you're
I'm looking at
you're a
now.
spreadsheet girl, aren't you?
I am a spreadsheet girl.
I
I
can
am a
tell.
spreadsheet girl. I That made it so much. Once I figured it out, I had a little hiccups because some of my spreadsheets didn't quite do right the first time around. But once we got it right, I have them all saved.
Yes, good, because you're gonna use them for the rest of your life, I hope.
Yes.
So, for people who don't know the tools now, the word spreadsheet for people who aren't spreadsheet girls, I'm gonna just say, totally get it can be a scary word. But what we're talking about really are tools, calculators that do the math for you, calculators that you plug your data into and you get an output. And so that's what we're talking about here. Is there one in particular that you would say that you would want others to know, like one that really gave you clarity beyond others?
I'm not sure what it's called. It was in the beginning of the program, the know your net worth or your something around value, net worth types of questions, which I think is really good because people don't know. Like, you know how much you make every 2 weeks, right? But you don't always know your net worth. Um, and you don't know, values of life insurance policies, how much your home is worth, equity, all these different variables that people don't take in consideration when you think about like your full portfolio.
Mhm.
So that one was really an eye opener. And then, of course, your FI number. Um, I appreciated it, really understanding what it meant. I appreciated that one too.
Yes, yeah. So the net worth tracker is what you're talking about, and you're right that most of the time we think about our how much money we have by the amount of money that's coming into our accounts, but that's the money that's coming and going all the time. And so the way that we really can track our progress is by calculating and tracking and monitoring over time our net worth. And so
Mhm.
I'm glad that that was useful and an eye opener. More importantly, too, and something you touched on was that um, net worth is not a measure of personal worth, right? It's just
Mhm.
and so we do talk about that, and you mentioned that, and I want to um, just say that I'm glad that that was useful. And then FI number for people who aren't familiar with that, that's free. That's like how much money you have to have invested in order to live off of your investment returns for the rest of your life. And you know what, Shamika, did you get to the crossover point calculator yet? I know you're not quite at the end, but you're close.
I think so. I think
Mhm.
I did do the spreadsheet from the other company and print it out. So I did get a number.
Yeah.
Um, but some of the numbers that I put in were kind of roundabout numbers. They weren't as specific as I would want them to be. But I did get a printout of the crossover number.
And did you get any clarity about what point in the future, like what age you might be in the future until you are able to reach that number where you're able to live off of your investments?
I did. I was probably a little bit surprised at the number. I don't remember the exact number, but I think it was something in the 50s. So that was definitely encouraging for me to stick with it.
But that's your
And
goal, right?
yes, that's the goal. So kind of stick with it till I get there and really just follow the plan. I think the nice thing about having a number is that you can follow a plan and reach that number. It's a lot less complicated than people realize.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
yeah.
Following the steps, knowing what is important to look at. So there's so much stuff out there in the finance world. There's so many numbers flying at us all over the place, but most of them don't matter. And so
Mm.
knowing the ones to look at is important. What would you say is the best result that you've received plugging into the Nurses Investing for Wealth method?
I would say it's been a couple of different results. I think one of the best results is that and there may be others who feel the same way. I didn't really know that you could manage your own 401k. And it's shocking because I did work in human resources, but we didn't get into all of that. I always just assumed that the 401k, you put your money in, your employer matches, hopefully, and they know what to do. If you leave there, you roll over, then they know what to do. And of course, I later realized, which I might have already known, but didn't act on, that's probably a bad idea to give somebody tens and thousands of dollars to manage on your behalf and hope for the best. So I think that really going in there, you walking through people, you walking me through and kind of looking at the different types of stock options, bonds, cryptocurrency, things of that nature, and really just going in and making a change. you
Mhm.
know, versus just looking at it every quarter or every month or so, and actually seeing, oh, well, this is a better fit for me. It's been a couple of months. The money is actually doing what it needs to be doing. So that would be the piece that I think was the most impactful was that I, for many years, only gave the money away essentially and hope for the best. But now, of course, I'm in there all the time and looking and, adjusting as needed.
Yeah, yeah. And I love that because that's the whole point is because now you know how to pick, how to analyze one, how to analyze these investments, two, how to match it to your risk, hopefully, and
Mhm.
three, how to buy and sell them. And so that's what you can do and what you have done by the sounds of it inside of your 401k. And that's exactly what the point of those accounts are. And you're right. Most people do not know this. If I were to ask 10 nurses, probably 10 out of 10 would not know this. And so I'm glad that you're going to help me change this because that's what we need.
Yes, for sure.
Okay, last question.
Mm.
What would you say to any other nurse, any other advanced practice nurse who's listening and who's thinking about joining Ultimate Nurse Investing, but they're having trouble making a decision? What would the thing be that you wanted them to know?
One, I would say it's a doable program. You do have to be it's a more mental than it is time consuming. The actual walkthrough of the program, the group sessions, I made majority of them, majority of the group sessions. You're always available, so it's not a situation where you feel like, oh, well, I have to wait till this time to connect with Angel. I message you all the time when the thought comes in my head in the middle of the night. I'm like, let me see what Angel thinks about that. And you're always quick to respond. So that gives you a level of comfort that the person is equally as invested in what you're trying to achieve. You definitely get a return on your investment. Um, Sooner than you realize because there really isn't a price on like confidence when it comes to your money or your finances. I think feeling more confident kind of spreads throughout all parts of your life when it comes to your finances, not just like this piece of it, because a lot of the focus can be on, or at least for me, is on retirement. Start sooner the better. Um, I would have told myself I should have started this process 10 years ago when I was a little bit younger, for nurses who are in that space where they're, high earning nurses, do it now. And then it makes it a lot easier to incorporate plans and kind of, do that zero based budgeting and give your money purpose. So um, I've had a good experience. I'm excited to see, what it'll look like a year later, and definitely reach out to Angel and tell her how things are going. But I definitely feel a lot more confident in managing my finances and understanding how it works.
Well, I am excited to hear from you in a year from now. And the thing is that I know that people like you are going to be seeing results for the rest of your life because this is a lifelong program. So I just want to say again, congratulations. You've done so well in walking through these steps. And I can see, even just talking with you today from the time that you came into the program, I can see how you are so much more clear in your plans and even in the questions that you ask because now you know what is important to be focusing on.
Right. And you covered just about all the topics I wanted in the program. So you really touched on so many different topics, not just like retirement, not just savings. And that helped me. So like whenever different things came up in my life, that like the ESPP question, that was a topic in the program, the 529, the ESA, that was a topic. So it was nice to kind of have it happen and then also get like more explanation as to what it is and how you can incorporate it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. So, yes, for anybody who's listening, we cover it all. And one of the great things about having Shemeka in the program is that, Shemeka, you had some experiences in your life with, for example, the ESPP that hadn't come up before in the program. And so it let me develop the program even more. So I literally went in and changed the course, changed the documents based on the work that Shamika and I did inside of our program because I know that it's going to come up for others. And so when something isn't in there, we add it because every person that comes into the program is different. And so I'm grateful to you for asking those questions and letting us work through them together. Okay, so that is it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing this
Of
with me, Shemeka,
course.
and for sharing your experience. Hey everyone, thanks for listening today. Could you see yourself in Shamika's story at any point? If so, I'd love to hear how. It means so much to me to work with action taking nurses like Shemeka who are serious about doing the work to create life flexibility, work optional freedom, and end money confusion once and for all. I'm honored that Shemeka trusted me enough to go through the steps I teach nurses and advanced practice nurses. And I'm so happy to hear directly from her about the transformation she's experienced. Shemeka shared with us about how she's relieved she's finally able to understand how to invest her own 401k. See that the steps are simple to follow now that she's learned the essential skills. Make some decisions about investing for early retirement and generational wealth, and have her early retirement date in sight. Replace taking unnecessary risks with her money to making smart choices she's confident will lead her to her goals. Shemeka, like many nurses and advanced practice nurses who I have gone through the steps in my program with, waited to enter the program until she was sure she had enough time to implement the steps. And once inside the program, she took full advantage of the support and personalized help. That's why she was successful, because she set aside time to learn the steps and plug in. In fact, Shemeka scheduled out 1 to 2 hours each week to do the work, and she stuck to it. And she completed the essential steps within about 4 to 5 months. That's how fast this can happen. So if you're feeling some sort of way about money, confused, scared, worried you'll run out, daunted by jargon or experts, unsure where to start, who to trust, or what action to take that is going to pay you a return on your investment, and that's customized to you and your specific life and goals, then I'm here for you. All you need is 1 to 2 hours a week to do the work. You have my permission to put in a request for PTO time if that's what it takes to get the time in your schedule. Like Shemeka said, think of it like a chore. You have to do it. Make time for it and do it soon. Don't be that person whose visits are cut short with your grandkids in order to go to work because you delayed doing this life-changing chore. Here's some good news. After doing the work with me, you'll be able to complete all your money tasks in just 1 hour a month for the rest of your life, just like Shemeka's doing, without guessing or hoping that it's right. And that's going to pay you more than your full-time nursing salary one day. Can you imagine you, one day in the future, thinking back to today? You're having a hard time even remembering a time in your past when you worried about not being able to make enough money or have enough money to provide for yourself or your family. And because of that, feeling stuck in a burnout job. It's hard to remember because now you regularly do the things you want most in life and fit nursing in where it makes sense. You are work optional. That's you in the future. If you're ready to start, go get my free 2-hour training at learn.nursesinvesting.com and commit to yourself to do the work by setting your first 2 hours aside and listening to that training. You have 1 week to do it. This is your first step to making work optional in just an hour a month. I'll leave the link in the show notes. You'll also find a link to NOSA Group, Shemeka's company. Make sure to tell me your thoughts about Shemeka's story and how it lands with you, either in the comments or on Instagram. Nurses Investing for Wealth. I'll be back in the next episode. I'll tell you more about my personal nursing journey and how I set myself up for financial freedom. You'll see that I wasn't destined to be wealthy and why I still feel like it's a miracle that it happened to me. I'm not holding anything back. See you there, where we'll continue the pursuit of turning one nurse's financial independence into another nurse's power.